I'm really eager to share some practices I've used over the years that help folks elicit and analyze requirements, whether they're working in a traditional or agile environment. I've organized this. We have a brief intro, and then I've organized it into 3 sections. The first section, I'll do a quick recap of the basic ingredients that are needed for effective business analysis. And then in section 2, I'm going to slow down and spend more time on that secret sauce, some of those special ingredients that I use when I'm working with folks, and they're all things that are related to delivering valuable and holistic and timely requirements. And the third section, I'm going to share some tips for how we can grow that skill set. And then, of course, as Michael said, we'll have a Q&A period. I do want to be clear, though, that in this talk, I'm not going to cover on how to be a mentor or how to be a mentee. There are other resources for that. What I hope is that based on our time together today, whether you're new to business analysis or you have many years' experience, you'll pick up a few tips that you could use immediately. So it may seem funny, but to get started, what I'd like really to do is pause for just a moment, and I'd like you to think about what you're working on right now. What's your chief challenge? What's your pain point in doing your analysis work? And if you had access to a mentor, how would you frame that request for help? So I'm going to be quiet for about 20 seconds. I'd really ask you to focus on this question, and would you please just jot it down someplace? We're going to come back to it at the end. Okay, so I'd like to be clear. I want us to be able to, as a community, move from the role of business analysts to the goal. We're shifting that focus. What is the business goal? What's the business value we need to deliver? I'd like to move from the title of business analyst to thinking about the work that we do, the discipline of business analysis, the practice of business analysis, and focus on those key techniques that we can use that are going to contribute to delivering that business value. Some of you may be familiar with the IIBA. It's the International Institute of Business Analysis. It's not analysts, it's not the role, it's the work. So the first of the 3 sections would be, as I mentioned, the basic ingredients. I'm a foodie. I just love to cook. Most of all, I love to eat. So this idea of making a dish, a good sauce is not going to mask or make up for some gummy pasta. So what I want to focus on in the basic ingredients would be that foundation. And I'd like to move quickly through some of those key things. I'm assuming you use many of these, but just as a basis for us moving on to the secret sauce in just a little. So this idea of starting with the premise that business analysis is a discipline, and that discipline is going to use requirements engineering principles. To think that we are requirements engineers means that we know that there's a normal, effective way when it's time to focus on software products, that when we develop them, we use these practices regardless of the methodology. And looking at this visualization here, there are 2 aspects I'd like to pause on just for a moment. The center aspect about developing requirements, there are these 4 activities: elicit, analyze, specify, and validate that we perform. And that circle with the arrows going around is a reminder that as we do this work, we're doing it in an iterative way. Then the banner around that, requirements management, is another activity and discipline and how we would store and protect those valuable requirements assets. So the most basic of basic ingredients would be to set the stage. What is the context? Do some planning. And one of the most critical things we need to start with is to identify and involve the stakeholders. We like to think of the stakeholders as being composed of three categories or three communities. There are the business folks who authorize and pay for the product development. There's the user community that interacts with the product. And then, of course, there's the technology community that actually builds the product. And we need to, when we do our analysis, work together with them and come up with a shared understanding, set priorities. Some statistics have shown that the stakeholder involvement is either a number one or number two critical success factor when we're developing a product. Certainly, we need to know what our goal is, what's the target, what's the vision for the product, and maybe it's a problem statement, as simple as that. But we need to know the business case. The key aspect here is that we're going to repeatedly return and use these goals and objectives as a filter when we're doing our elicitation and our analysis, controlling our scope, making sure that we stay focused on those goals. Elicitation, a key aspect here, making sure that we use multiple elicitation techniques. Over the years, I think we've over-relied on interviews, and interviews have their place, and they can be valuable, but we need to think about a way to blend these multiple elicitation techniques on a particular effort. Maybe I need to do a facilitated workshop with a group of folks. Maybe I'm going to participate in an exploratory prototype, or maybe I'm going to be doing some user task analysis and research. Maybe I have to do a survey. So what we're looking to do is to make sure that we don't just focus on one of the techniques, but know when and how to use a variety of elicitation techniques. Now, to me, the glossary, man, this is just the very basic ingredient for doing elicitation and analysis. I think it is so seriously underrated. I wish I could see you all and ask how many folks have an up-to-date glossary that they're working with right now. Often when I start a mentoring engagement, I'll ask folks, oh, could you send me your glossary of your business terminology? And often there's just dead silence. I know that we could have many people testify of the wasted time and effort that goes on when we don't have consistent definitions. And when there are contradictory definitions, how do we resolve those conflicts? So our goal would be to have what's called a ubiquitous language. In other words, common business terms that we're using in all our communication and will permeate all of our requirements. Now, analyzing, what I want to be careful, and when I first started working with the core team on the BA body of knowledge, I think it was like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was curious why there were two separate knowledge areas, one for elicitation and another for analysis. I know that when I analyze, I'm often eliciting more requirements, and when I elicit, I'm often analyzing. And yet when we focus on these, there are key techniques we can use. So looking at analysis, this is a visual that we use at EBG Consulting to remind folks that when we think of the functional requirements, it's not just process, it's not just the actions that a product has to provide. Some people call those capabilities. We also have to understand the user roles. Those are the folks who would interact with the product. We have to understand the data that the product uses and possibly stores, and certainly the rules that the product needs to enforce. We need to study these individually and collectively to make sure that we have a multidimensional perspective. One person, when they think by themselves about some particular requirement, they often create a mental model of that particular need, and many times one person's mental model doesn't equal others. So over